Hey everyone, it's Dina Calmetta here, and welcome back to the DAC Report. This is actually my first update since the new launch of the ministry, and I cannot think of a better topic to talk about than surveillance, censorship, digital IDs, the war on free speech, and biblical truth. Because it's not just one law, or one app, or one nation. Now we're starting to see a pattern, you guys. It's being reported that private chats are being scanned. Telecom companies are being given orders behind closed doors. Religious speech is being placed under more scrutiny. Cameras are being used to prove you are human, and hands are being scanned for verification. And then we enter populations being pushed towards digital ID, age verification, and biometric access. How much of our privacy are we willing to surrender in the name of safety? Because the Bible has already warned us that one day there will be a global allegiance, and we are watching it go in that direction. In fact, I want to take you to this first report from Brussels. It's being reported that Brussels could reopen the fight to scan your private chats. It goes on to say that Europe's governments lost a fight over surveillance 3 months ago, and now they want a rematch on their own terms. EU ambassadors agreed to advance a temporary extension of the framework that lets platforms like WhatsApp and Messenger scan users' private communication. So if you don't want your messages to be analyzed, leaked, or spied on, do not put them on the internet. I don't care if it's Messenger, WhatsApp, email. Keep it private, especially if it's a sensitive matter. Use other means. We got to do things the old-fashioned way, you guys. That's the only way to protect ourselves against these laws. But it doesn't stop there. We have some very interesting bills that are happening in Canada right now. C8 and C9. Canada's new cybersecurity law gives a cabinet minister the power to order any telecom provider to cut off service to a named person without a warrant, without prior judicial approval, and under a gag order that can prohibit the provider from explaining why. That power is now live. The law also creates warrantless data collection authorities broad enough to scoop up subscriber information, metadata, location data, and browsing history. It was supposedly written to protect critical infrastructure, but what is being built is a surveillance machine with almost no independent checks on how it gets used. So this basically gives the government a broad spectrum to shut you down if they consider you to be a cyber threat. And some critics are warning that this type of power can definitely be abused, and I have to agree with them. But it doesn't stop there, you guys. Let's talk about what's going on with the Bill C9, because this will have an effect on Christians. This next report comes from Prophecy Newswatch, and I have talked about this bill before, but apparently supporters describe the legislation as a necessary step to combat hatred and protect vulnerable groups. The bill expands Canada's hate crime and hate propaganda laws and introduces new measures designed to address hate-motivated conduct. On the surface, many Canadians may see little reason for concern, but buried within the legislation is a change that has many Christians, civil liberty advocates, and free speech defenders sounding the alarm. For decades, Canada's criminal code contained a defense that protected the good faith expression of opinions on religious subjects and religious texts in certain hate promotion cases. Bill C9 removes that protection. So what does this mean going forward? Well, critics warn that Parliament has removed an important safeguard that helped protect religious expression, leaving future courts and prosecutors with greater authority to determine where legitimate religious teaching ends and criminal hate promotion begins. Could biblical teaching someday become the subject of a criminal hate promotion complaint? What happens when a complaint is filed over a sermon discussing Romans 1? What happens when a Christian school teaches the biblical definition of marriage? What happens when a pastor preaches that repentance involves turning away from sinful behavior? What happens when biblical teachings on sexuality are viewed by activists as harmful or discriminatory? Before Bill C9, there was a specific statutory defense available in certain cases involving religious expression. Now, there is not. That reality alone guarantees that future courts, not Parliament, will increasingly be asked to draw those lines. So, for instance, if someone in Canada makes a post on social media about Romans chapter 1, could that person automatically be prosecuted or fined? Well, not automatically, but could a complaint be made, and could authorities or courts eventually be asked to decide whether that speech crossed the line into hate promotion? That is the concern that critics are raising. And that is why this matters. Because once religious expression loses clear legal safeguards, the question becomes who gets to decide when biblical truth becomes harmful or hateful. So you might be thinking, well, Dina, that happened in Canada. It has nothing to do with us here in the US. Do you realize how quickly that scenario can change? It can change on a dime. And what about 2028? What kind of a president are we going to see in 2028? Now, hopefully the Lord comes back before then. But if he shall tarry, we have to wonder what's going to happen during those years. Because we see what's happening in New York. Could that spread to the president's seat? I guess time will tell, but we do know that when the Antichrist is in power, this will be nothing compared to what he's going to do as far as control goes. But I would like to move along and talk about what Google has been up to. Apparently, they want to see your hands now before letting you through. Company's newest reCAPTCHA check rolling out now as a test asks you to switch on your camera and wave at it so an algorithm can decide whether you're a human or a bot. That wave is less casual than it looks. The system records a short video of your hand and pulls 21 hand landmark coordinates from it, mapping your finger joints, your palm, and the way you move in real time. Google, of course, describes the purpose as liveness detection, a way for websites to fend off automated account creation, credential stuffing, and other fraud. But this is still a biometric scan. It's collected so that they can prove you're a person and still involves turning on your camera for Google. Google has lined up the promises you would expect. The company says the footage is deleted once verification finishes, no audio is recorded, and the video is never tied to your identity. Its documentation adds that nothing goes to third parties, and the data serves security alone. Then points to the Google privacy policy for how everything is used and stored, a policy elastic enough to cover almost everything. So it's very interesting that recently we're seeing a lot of these tools want to use your hands. Why is that? Because Revelation 13 verses 16 through 18 tells us that in order to buy or sell anything or just to be a part of society during the Great Tribulation, you're going to need a mark on your right hand or on your forehead. And without it, you're not going to be able to buy or sell anything. So it's very interesting that we're seeing these tools being used right now. But I would like to move along and talk about what's going on in the UAE. The UAE cabinet has approved a resolution barring children under 15 from holding social media accounts. And enforcing it will mean verifying every user in the country, adult or child. The resolution states plainly that a user simply saying how old they are will no longer count. With self-declaration off the table, companies have to verify age some other way. And every available option from identity documents to facial analysis to behavioral profiling means each adult hands over more of themselves to prove they are not a child. Britain's Labour government wants image scanning software on every phone in the country, and this last week the government confirmed it will not stop at new devices. It will reach the old ones, the second-hand ones, and the phone a parent wipes before handing it to a child. Now let's bring it back closer to home. Prophecy Recon and Reclaim the Net are now reporting on something called Project 2029, a proposal called Kids Over Clicks. Now, just to be clear, this is not a law right now. This is a policy agenda. But the concern is this. It is being promoted as a way to protect children online by restricting social media accounts for anyone under 16. And listen, we all want children protected. That is not the issue. The issue is enforcement, because in order to keep children off these platforms, companies have to verify who is a child and who is an adult. And once you go down that road, age verification can quickly become identity verification for everyone. So again, we are seeing the same pattern: child safety, online safety, cybersecurity, hate speech, misinformation, different labels, different countries, but the same direction. More verification, more surveillance, and less anonymity online. So in conclusion, if we take a step back and we look at this all together, it becomes very clear, you guys. It's about control. Who gets access? Who gets verified? Who gets to speak? Who gets to preach? Who gets to participate? And eventually, who gets to buy and sell? This is all in preparation for the tribulation period, because nobody knows when Jesus is going to return, but the enemy is preparing for his return, because for 7 years the Antichrist will be in power. And Jesus said that when you begin to see these things come to pass, to look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And are we not seeing these things begin to come to pass? I believe with all my heart that we are that generation. But those are your headlines for today. I'd love to hear from all of you. So please do leave me your comments below. Tell me what you think about the new setup, the show, the logo. I'd love to hear from you. Also, come and visit us on our new website at thedacreport.com. Until next time, everyone, thank you so much for watching. God bless and stay safe.